Hello everybody, welcome back to part 6 of our 132 scale tornado build. This is the Italeri kit. In part 5 I managed to get the airframe painted, did all the different panels, the replacement panels, the patch panels and so on. And in this episode I'm going to be doing the decal work and the weathering for the aircraft. And although this was a commemorative aircraft performing at the display circuit, when you get close up to it, it was quite dirty in parts, particularly the access panels where the ground crew had been working and some of the walkways on the top surface of the aircraft as well. So we'll be tackling some medium grade weathering, I would say, on this build. But first of all, we're going to start off with the decals, so I'll just move the model out of the way. And what I'm going to be using is the kit sheet, which you can see I've already started. This is Italeri's own produced, but I think it could well be a cartograph sheet. The decals on the sheet look that sort of quality if you're familiar with cartograph decals. And I have used some of these and they've gone down really well, as you would expect of that manufacturer if that's what they are. In addition to that, I've got a sheet here from Decals. I got this from the Fantasy Print Shop in the UK, and this has 5 commemorative schemes in it. It's quite an expensive sheet, it's nearly £30, something like that, maybe a little bit more, and it just contains the main commemorative decals and the national insignia and so on. There are no stencils on this, so that's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be doing this version here, the 617 Squadron Tornado GR4, which had a really striking design on the fin and rudder. Otherwise it's overall grey, as you've seen from the previous part. Now, there was a slight problem with this sheet when I got it, which was that it was missing a tiny detail, but it's quite a visible detail, which was the ground crew names, which are on the targeting pod on the underside. So a quick email to the Fantasy Print Shop and with some measurements and some artwork. And they sent me these. They gave me 8 prints and I've tested a couple of them already. The other thing that I've used is this, which is an Edward sheet, a set of GR4 stencils. And I use this because the kit decals for the stencils, although they're really well printed, the grey that they've used for it just disappears into the medium sea grey that I've used on the airframe. So you just can't see them at all, really. These Edward ones are slightly darker, but on the downside they're not quite as good quality, so the printing isn't quite as sharp as the kit decals. And they've got this strange current feature of Edward decals, which is a very wide carrier film, so they're not as easy to apply. And these are the ones that some people peel the carrier film off after application, but I've never tried to do that. Always looked a particularly risky job to do. And for the ones that I've used so far, I have managed to get them to dissolve into the surface of the model, so it's not too much of a problem. And the main thing is that the grey does show up on the surface of the paintwork that I've got on. So those are the sheets that I'm going to be using during this video. So there's quite a lot of work to do. As you can see, there's an awful lot of stencil work to do, and I will show you how each type of decal behaves as we're working through the process. So I'm going to start with the Euro decals and do the commemorative scheme on the fin and rudder of the aircraft. Now, this will have its own challenges just because of the size of the decal. So what I'm going to do is start off with one of the smaller elements. The main commemorative scheme comes in 3 main elements and a fin flash as well. So Just to see how they behave, I'll start off by applying the fin flash and then on with the rest of the markings. So it's always a good idea when you're not familiar with a sheet, and I'm not familiar with Eurodecals, it's the first time I've used them, is to have a practice run with them. And in this case, as I said, I'm going to use one of the fin flashes. You can see you do get spares for the other schemes, but something like that is easily replaced if you mess it up. Whereas if you start with this large decal here, for example, and you make a mistake with it, you're into buying a new sheet altogether, which can work out quite expensive. So this assembly is all ready to go. The black is actually a gloss black, so there's no need to apply a gloss varnish over the top of it. So we'll get ourselves ready. Got some microset and microsol and some warm water, not hot water. So the first thing to do is to work out how quickly these decals release from the backing sheet. So they do take the time. So my first impression is they're fairly grippy, which might be a bit of a problem with the large designs. So with the microset, I just allow the decal to settle to start with, just for a minute or two. I'll just try a little set on this just to test them out. This is on a perfectly flat surface, so it doesn't need it in the sense that it has to bed down into any detail. It's just one of those replaceable images that if the microsol does any damage, I can just use another one. So with sol, just leave it, because if the decal does react fairly strongly to sol and you mess around with the brush, you'll distort it. So they appear to be behaving themselves. So we'll start the first of the larger designs, which is this one. I'm just looking at my references here just to get the positioning of this right. Hopefully the manufacturer's got the sizing correct for the Italeri kit. So I'm just checking the position against this blade aerial and the point at which the 70 goes over the top of the rudder. So that's where I'm kind of aiming for, those two markers. Now with a large decal like this, you want to be able to move it freely on the backing sheet rather than trying to peel it off, because you want to be able to slide it directly off the sheet onto the model. And it's very difficult to move these around once they come into contact with the plastic, so you want to try to get them more or less in the correct place straight away. So that's moving around okay now. So there's quite a bit of liquid there, which will help. It'll just prevent the decal from grabbing straight away. So I'm just getting the decal to the edge. So it's come off nice and flat, and it's more or less where I want it. Just check that. I'll just put the blade aerial into position. That'll tell us or give us a reference as to where this 70 needs to be positioned. Now we've got the number 70 here going across the top of the rudder, and I will cut that eventually, but not yet. It's too early. You need the decal to be fairly well set before you try to cut it. Otherwise what you'll do, particularly with a slightly blunt blade, is you'll drag the decal and you'll pull it out of position. The key really with decal work is patience, just to take it step by step, don't rush it. So that's gone on nicely, it's in the correct position. There are no bubbles, there's no air underneath. So we can leave that for a while just to settle down a little bit. So moving the decal off the sheet like you saw, basically by pulling the sheet from underneath it, prevents or reduces the chance of getting air trapped under the decal. And with a large decal like this, it's more difficult to get the air out. So if you can do as much as you can to minimize that to start with, you're onto the right track. So just leave that alone for a while. Okay, just a bit of sol now. And we'll leave that alone. One thing that I do to avoid fiddling around with it, it's very tempting, is to just go to one side and apply some of the other decals. Put this to one side for a moment. Okay, so that's gone down okay. And as it dries properly, it will pull down a little bit more into the panel lines. I don't really want to cut it apart from on the rudder line, but it might need it in one or two places. But as I said, it's a waiting game, see how it works. Looks promising so far anyway. So we've got a similar job to do with this very large image here. So from the first application, I now know that you've got to leave these in the water for a while. Okay, here goes. Tricky. Did get some air under this one, but you just push it out from the middle, and if you use plenty of water at this stage, it just reduces the chance of tearing the image. So at this stage you can just alternate between allowing this new image to dry and just settle down a bit and just finessing the previous one with a little bit more microsol. And because it's now had chance for the adhesive to really start to grip onto the surface, I can cut through the top of the fin here very carefully with a brand new X-Acto blade. The other consideration with this tail is that obviously I've got it off the model, I've not assembled it, and that has turned out to be probably the right decision, because it would be very difficult to manoeuvre what is now quite a large model and do all this work. The fit of the bottom part of the fin unit here is good onto the rest of the airframe, so it can basically just push on once all this work's done. So that's okay, ready for some microsol. Okay, I'll leave it alone, time for a cup of tea. Okay, that's a relief, both sides of the tail done. And they're not easy, those decals, but with a bit of care you can get them to lie down, and they're actually very well sized for the Italeri kit. So having tested out the Euro decals, I'll now have a go with the kit decals and see what they do. So again, I'm using some microset for these kit decals. It's not particularly strong, so we should be alright with them. So that's gone on really nicely. The backing for this kit decals just melted into the paint finish, which is important with stencils because they're often an area where when you put the top coat on the top varnish you'll find some silvering turning up, but I don't think that'll happen with these, hopefully. So both the kit decals and the Euro decals have gone down really nicely. The slight difficulty with the kit decals is that the grey that they've used for some of the stencils is very close to the medium sea grey. So I'm going to try out the Edward decals and see if we get any more distinction with those. But I'll get the rest of the kit decals on first and we'll come back see how the Edward ones perform. So this is one of the few Edward decals that I'm using, and that's mainly because the ones in the kit are inaccurate. The markings on these two stencils are wrong on one side, I can't remember which, but these are the markings for the horizontal stabilizer pitch, if you like. I'm sure the airframe guys would have had a proper name for it. And just check the position of that with the tail plane in place. So that's gone down all right. The carrier film, although it's quite big, it extends a long way beyond the image. It is thin and it has blended in pretty well. You can't see it, hopefully, when the varnish has gone on. And it's a tiny detail, the error in the kit decal. Which on the starboard side it's just got the position markers reversed, but it's pretty difficult to spot, but Edward have got it right with theirs. So that's all three types of decal, and all have gone on pretty well, and there's a bit more to do. There's lots of stenciling to do still, so I'll get all those done and then I'll come back. We'll give the whole airframe a coat of gloss just to seal the decals in, then we can start to do some weathering. Okay, with all the decal work done, it's time to start to do some panel line washes and the start of the weathering process on the model. Just before that, what I've done is given the whole model a wash down with some warm water and a couple of drops of household washing up detergent in it. The reason for that is to remove any excess decal adhesive that can spread when you're applying the decals over the airframe for quite a distance, and if you don't get it all off when you put the top coat of varnish on, you can get kind of a white bloom on the airframe where the adhesive has remained, so try and wash it off. Now I'm using an enamel wash for this step, So the enamel thinner that you use to remove the excess wash would clean that adhesive off anyway, but it's just an extra precaution just to make sure you don't spoil the final finish on the kit. So this is the wash that I'm going to be using. It's an AK product. This and some Tamiya as well, in this case a grey. The AK is for a grey and blue camouflage, and it's part of this set that I use for different colours, brown and green, sand and desert and so on. There's a white one here and a black. So there's 5 different washes in the set, and as I said, in this case I'm using the wash for grey and blue. Now with this step you've got to be very careful because for 2 reasons. The first one is that we've got a very pale grey colour here, so it's easy to overdo the depth of the panel line wash. And also, if you remember back to previous episodes, this kit does have very deep panel line mouldings in it already. Now I've tried to modify those by applying a coat of Mr. Surfacer into the panel line, so they are reduced a bit, but they are still quite prominent. And a very dark wash will just make this look overdone. So I'm going to test this grey out. It might just be a little bit dark, and if not, I'll go to the Tamiya ordinary grey. They actually do another one, a dark grey, but I think that's probably going to be too much. So we're going to have to be careful with this step. It's going to be easy to overdo it. So I've just decanted a little bit of the wash. I've got some enamel thinners in the tray as well. And I want to apply this just to the panels. I'm not going to give the model an overall wash. Very rarely do I do that. So I'm just going to do a small section just to test out the colour. This is called a pin wash, where you just applying directly to the panel line that you're trying to enhance, rather than plastering the wash all over the airframe. One thing about this particular airframe is, although it was a commemorative scheme on the display circuit, it was kept reasonably clean, but there's still quite a lot of signs of dirt and grime on the airframe, mainly from the servicing areas that the ground crew would have accessed. So panels, around panels, there's dirty fingerprints and grease marks, and there's the usual signature tornado staining on the tail from the thrust reversers. I haven't got a really good photograph of the underside, but some friends of mine who have worked on the aircraft have shown me that the underside was a constant task for cleaning hydraulic oil off, and they did get quite grimy. The thing with this step is that you can experiment. If you go too far, being an enamel wash over an acrylic finish coat, you can remove the enamel wash. Mostly anyway, you can get rid of most of it. So you don't have to be too scared at this point. Okay, so the wash is dry now. I've removed it from this first section that I put on in the last sequence, just to check that it wasn't going to be too overwhelming. I've gone ahead and done the rest of the airframe, and now we'll clean the rest up. So I'm just going to use a tissue, and usually you can get this stuff off with the tissue dry. It does wipe off pretty well. I've actually got a little bit too much for my liking on this area. It just needs a little bit more work to remove it. You can see what's happening now is that the underlying paint's been stained by the wash, and that property of the wash gives it quite a bit of versatility. You can start to play with the weathering effect that you want. Remember, this is just the first step in the weathering process. You don't have to try and achieve the effect straight away. Now, as I said, this panel line colour is just a little bit too strong for me, but in the next step we'll start to reduce that a little bit. What I want to do at the moment is just get an even application and an even staining of the panels. What you don't want is a clean area like this, because it'll just look too out of place. You want to first of all get the wash nice and evenly spread. This is a big airframe, so this step takes quite a while. I'll be doing this over the course of probably a couple of days, and it's also a good idea to do it over a lengthened time scale, because it's good to just let the wash dry a little bit, and then you can just stand back and just check every now and again how the effect is coming along. You can just use a cotton bud to just get into those little areas where the wash hasn't taken, because as I said, you don't want those nice clean patches. Got one here on the duct, so just grubby those up a little bit. I'm trying to remove the wash in the line of the airflow on the airframe, and even though this isn't a final effect, that just starts to contribute to the final weathering effect, and you get those streaks. These cotton sticks are quite good. These are Tamiya ones. So you can see they're quite a bit smaller and sharper than a standard domestic chemist type cotton bud, and they're good for getting right into the corners with a nice sharp edge. So you really don't need to worry about this step, because in the end you can remove the whole thing if you want, well, virtually get rid of the enamel wash. Just use some enamel thinners and most of it will come off, so you're not really going to do a lot of damage. It's a good chance to experiment. I wouldn't advocate experimenting particularly on a kit of this sort of complexity and value. Really, it's an expensive kit, but you can have some confidence that you'll be able to retrieve the situation if you're not happy with the finish that you get. It is a bit scary when you first put the wash on. It looks a complete mess, but it'll be fine at the end. We're getting there. That's a good example of using these little Tamiya buds, is to get underneath the intake there. Okay, so I'll finish off the cleanup, the initial cleanup, and then we'll come back, see what we've got to do next. Okay, so that wash has been removed now. I've let this dry overnight, and that just allows you to come back after a while once everything's settled down, everything's dry, and you can just judge how much you're going to need to do with the panel lines. Now I'm still thinking that this is a little bit too dark, it's a bit too stark really, so I'm going to line it up a little bit, and I'm going to start by just taking a little bit of enamel thinners and just moving it into the panel lines. You can see it's reactivating the wash. So what this will do is thin the wash down a little bit, make it less obvious, and we're also removing some of it. So it's basically thinning the wash down and redistributing it if that's what we want to do. As I said earlier, the versatility of this enamel wash is really good. You can play around with it. Every now and again just dry the brush off. And that lets you pick some more of the thinners up together with some of the pigment as well. The difficulty with this stage in terms of filming it is that the effects are pretty subtle really, and it's not always that the camera picks it up. So it will look a little bit different in reality to what you're seeing on the screen possibly. I'll just do this central area here because this is a long job to do all this. It's a big airframe, as I mentioned. So hopefully you can see that the intensity of the wash has come down a little bit in the panel lines. Another effect that you get at this stage, or you can create with the dilute wash, is just to create a bit of shading around the panel lines. Now that's an effect that you can get with either pre or post shading with an airbrush, but I think this is much more controllable than doing that. You can add as much or as little of the enamel thinner as you want. If you persisted with this stage, you could remove virtually all of it, but it's pretty close for my eye, so I think I'll leave it at that sort of intensity in the panel lines. But now what I want to do is apply thinner in such a way that it distributes the remaining wash that's come out of the panel lines over the panels themselves, just to start to create that staining effect and general grime from servicing and leaks and so on. We'll do some streaking effects later on. That's another step in the weathering process. I just want to get some general dirt on the underside at this stage. Now, one thing just to point out is that this is a sable brush, Kolinsky sable brush, which does make a difference, and that's because it picks up a lot more fluid than a synthetic brush would. So that's why they're better for painting, because they'll hold more paint in the bristles or hairs, so you're not having to refill it all the time. And by the same token, what it will do is suck up the excess thinners from the surface, if we want to do that, and deposit it down on the towel. So I'd always use a sable brush for this step. So I'm going to carry on and do the rest of the underside, and then the next step will be to come back in and start to apply some streaking effects to the underside of the airframe. Alright, so that's the wash and panel line step done. So I've distributed all the grey wash that I put in and stained all the panels, you can see that. And actually I'm looking on camera, and for some reason the camera saturates the effect a little bit more than it actually is. It looks dirtier than it actually is on camera. But this stage is a matter of personal preference really. I don't like too much weathering, and this is the limit of what I would like to see on any of my models. But I have got the benefit of some really good reference photographs for this particular aircraft, and what I'm doing is trying to match the degree of weathering to those photographs. Let's do the next step, which is to apply some specific leaks and stains, particularly around the area of the engine access doors, which are these here at the back. And I'm going to be using this AK set. This is an aircraft engine effects weathering set, and it contains 3 products: an engine oil, a wash for engines and turbines, and kerosene leaks and stains. Now the difference with particularly the engine oil and the kerosene product is that it's a translucent product, so it's a little bit like Tamiya smoke, something like that. So it accurately reproduces those sort of stains. Now I'm going to start off with the engine oil. Now with streaking effects, for me the trick is to just apply the product really sparingly. It goes a long way, and what I don't want is to have enormous lines of stains all the way back. So just a tiny amount will go, as I said, a long way. Let's just apply some to the back of the hatch here. So with a bit of thinner applied, just blend that in a little bit as we drag the product back. So I'm going to leave it there for the underside for the moment. I think I'm going to leave it at that full stop, but we'll see. It's just easy to go overboard once you start with the weathering. But that's about as dirty as I want to have it at the moment. Just coming back to the top surface now, and there are a couple of jobs that I want to do. The first one is on the wing sweep area here, and the Tornado often developed a characteristic staining here, which was from the wing moving in and out of the fuselage. So presumably dirt and grease on the inside of the wing sweep was dragged out in a fairly distinctive pattern onto the top of the wing here. And what I want to do is cut out a little mask to help us get the correct shape for that. So this is just a bit of trial and error really to get the correct diameter. And it's a good idea to get some photographs of these marks. The weathering marks, the stains and different coloured panels on a Tornado are very distinctive. They're almost like a fingerprint. So much so that you can tell the difference between this aircraft ZA412 and the sister ship. There were two marked up in this commemorative scheme. And I've looked at photographs of this airframe so much that I can tell the difference between the two aircraft without being able to see the serial number. Okay, I think that's got it, more or less. So I'll remove the tape. One reason for using the tape, apart from marking out the shape of this stain, is that it tends to accumulate a little bit of the pigment around the outside, around the edge. It just gives that border, if you like, to the stain. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'll leave that to dry. The last piece of weathering I want to do, it's another Tornado signature, which is the marks made from the thrust reversers as they deploy. So they sweep up and create again a circular mark on the bottom of the fin here. So I'll be using a mask again. So again, we've just got that very faint build-up of pigment around the edge of the mask. So that just helps mark out the position of the stain for us. Okay, so I'm going to call that time for this particular episode. The weathering step isn't finished yet. I've still got some bits and pieces to do, some fittings around the horizontal stabilisers here. The undercarriage doors have got to be weathered. I've already painted them, but just those one or two other bits and pieces to do to get them to match the rest of the weathering on the airframe. So I'll carry on with that off camera. As I said, in the next episode what I want to do is to permanently fit the fin, the horizontal stabilisers, and do all the work around the jet pipes. So I've got some resin jet pipes from Res Kit, and we'll build those thrust reversers that I've added the weathering for. So that'll be in part 7. So after that work's done in the next episode, what I'll have to do is fit the other bits and pieces, the undercarriage doors, finish the undercarriage off including the wheels, and then we've got the canopy to build. I've got some internals to do on the rear cockpit as well, and then I've got the stores to build and the pylons as well to fit, obviously. So there's a way to go yet, but I will have it done in the next 3 weeks for Scale Model World. So I'll leave it there, everybody. I'll get 1 or 2 photographs for you for the end of the video, and I hope you'll be able to join me for the next one, part 7, where, as I said, I'll be concentrating on the tail and getting those jet pipes done. Until then, everybody, look after yourselves, enjoy your modelling, and see you soon. Bye for now.